Thank you so much for this conference. Thank you, Isabella. My name is Gaurav Saxena, and I am from India. I am a third year PhD student in psychology at the University of Bristol, and Isabella and I have roughly the same set of supervisors in Bristol. Um, and my research is on decolonizing psychology curriculum, specifically what students think about the various things that Bristol and in general that is being done in UK context. Today, I will be presenting the second study from my PhD, where we explored student perspective on exactly the same topic about the various initiatives that are being happening for decolonizing psychology curriculum. And I used a critical realist lens to do that. First, I want to talk about what led me to this study, what was the background. So in the past 2 years, we Bristol have been trying to spread awareness and educate students about decolonization, what is it, and why it is relevant to students within psychology. And we did this by developing three bite-sized activities. So I think this partially answers Jamie's question about how we can include things within quantitative method because we had one activity about that. I wouldn't have time to go much into it, but you can scan the QR code and that will take you to my preprint. So basically, these activities were designed to introduce decolonial ideas to students at different levels of their degree. So after these activities were completed, students gave us qualitative and quantitative feedback. And what we really understood was that context is the key. By context, I mean the background or the specific circumstances of students. For example, white students and students of color, even though we put them under the same homogeneous category of being students, they both may have a very different response to any sort of decolonial activity. Even within students of color, two students of color can also have a very different response. Some of them would be very supportive, but others might not be as supportive as we'd expect them to be. So this made us aware that context matters, and this led me to my second study where we did a qualitative exploration about student experiences and what they think about decolonial initiatives that are happening, specifically in context of these three activities. Right? So the main question was to understand what are the contextual factors that are facilitating or hindering student engagement with decolonial initiatives. And we interviewed 21 psychology students at different stages of their study. I used a critical realism philosophical lens as my philosophical approach. I used reflexive thematic analysis as well as 4C model of thematic analysis, which is an analysis which is grounded within critical realism philosophy as guiding points for my analysis. And I used an abductive and retroductive uh, tools to aid my analysis. So by abduction, I basically mean that I was thinking about the best possible explanation about any observation that we were having. And by retroduction, I mean thinking backwards about what condition must exist for any observation to take place. Um, and we focused on engagement as our outcome of interest. But why engagement? So basically, we chose engagement because engagement is seen as an indicator of student success, and it is very popularly advertised and very popularly promoted by a lot of higher education institutions. So to keep our results manageable, we decided to stick to this one particular outcome. And I analyzed the data as per 4 layers of context by Pawson. You can scan the QR code. It has the preprint to my second study as well. So I used Pawson's 4 layer of context. It's like an onion uh, within which each layer sits on top of each other. So the first layer includes individual layer, which includes all student belief and knowledge and motivation. The second layer is the interpersonal layer, which includes all the different actors, for example, students as well as the academics and how they're interacting with each other. The third layer is the institutional layer, which comprises the departmental structures and the policies of the institution where one is based at. And finally, the infrastructural layer, which includes the wider societal forces, geopolitical, economic forces that might influence how students are responding. Now, I will briefly take you through all the different things I found within these layers. But again, I wouldn't have time to talk about them very deeply. So for that, you can scan the QR code. Um, so basically, this is the individual layer, uh, and the and the six boxes are six categories that I found. The text that are written on top of the arrows are the mechanism, but that wouldn't be the focus of this talk. I would only be focusing on the context. So, for example, the educational mindset, I found that within educational mindset, it basically talks about what approach students are taking towards their learning of psychology. And what I found that students were mostly taking a very instrumental approach to their education. By that, I mean that students would engage only with material which they thought was necessary for them to achieve any sort of grade or any sort of marks. So that automatically, whenever decolonial learning wasn't incentivized, it reduced engagement. The second one was about the teacher influence. So by teacher influence, I mean the quality of instruction by the teacher was a big determinant of how much students were really keen on engaging with any sort of decolonial content. Uh, Whenever any decolonial content was delivered in a very passionate manner or the passionate or enthusiastic manner, it had sort of like a domino effect. So students also tried to mirror that, and they were also very engaged and enthusiastic about engaging. Whereas whenever it was not delivered in a passionate manner, when the teacher seemed uninterested, uh, it had again a domino effect. And it was interesting because the teacher ethnicity did not matter really, because they said that as long as it is taught by somebody who's appearing to be knowledgeable and passionate about the subject, they don't matter what the ethnicity is, which is, I think, a good reminder for us, because psychology faculty in UK is mostly white. Uh, the third one was about academic priorities, which again leads us to the student motivation about marks, their preoccupation with marks. So whenever decolonization was not incentivized, they would simply not invest any time in engaging with it meaningfully. They would do it, but they would do it on a superficial level just to get by the class, basically. Prior knowledge. So, whenever students had some awareness of issues on racism or stereotype or any other thing, students naturally felt very sensitive to these issues that were being discussed. So, that increased motivation or that increased their engagement. By agency, I mean what students think is their ability or position to implement change. So this also sort of intersected with the ethnicity of students, because white students, they believed that because of their ethnicity, because they have taken space for so long, they shouldn't engage, and they should leave the space for their other peers of color, and they should take the lead and they should only follow. But what this expectation did was it put a, a very big burden on students of color to lead. It felt as if they have to now engage and defend their entire background and everything, and they were naturally thought of as experts on decolonization just because of their race, which they were not very comfortable with. By belief and personality, I mean how strongly, positively, or negatively students felt about decolonization. Um, the second layer was the interpersonal layer. Uh, so basically about how students and the classroom, how they all interacted with each other and how that affected their engagement. So within it, the first one being about the teacher and the teacher quality. Like I said, whenever the teacher was appearing to be informed about the topic of decolonization, about anything that they were delivering, students sort of tried to mirror that. And although, like I said, that although the ethnicity of the teacher did not matter, but there were some students who still felt that if decolonial content was delivered by an academic of color, it might add some sort of authenticity to the material and they might engage more. Although it did not matter much, but yeah, there was a slight hint of influence that I noticed. By classroom diversity, I mean how diverse the overall peer group is. Uh, and so this was important because it influenced how safe students felt whenever they were expressing themselves. So, I think because decolonization can lead to sometimes very sensitive discussion, how safe they feel in expressing their ideas, how safe they feel in expressing their views, if it was critical, mattered a lot to them. So the diversity also mattered because being involved in a very mixed group, sometimes a white student might feel uncomfortable sharing something which might appear critical because they are very afraid of attracting backlash. Right. The third one was about student environment and how comfortable it felt, which was similar to what I just said. And the fourth one was about the support. So even if I am involved in an environment where I have students from different ethnicity, if everybody is going to be supportive of decolonization, I will be supportive of decolonization. I think this is the domino effect again. Uh, Especially for undergraduate students when they're very fresh and just starting to think about ideas. I think this matters a lot because I think there were some students who said that, if there's just one student who very strongly negatively thinks about decolonization and if they are very vocal, it would have a topple down effect on the entire group and everybody would start thinking that, oh, this is uncool for us to engage in. Uh, yeah. So the third one was the institutional layer, uh, where basically the first one was about diverse faculty because if now I appreciate that a lot of the faculty board is not diverse enough, but students felt that at having a diverse faculty signals commitment, and that would positively motivate students. And like I said, that being taught about these topics by an academic of color would have some sort of a deeper impact because students would think that it is more epistemically authentic. The second one was about teacher training. Now, this was a little bit interesting because students felt that whenever they're teaching about something, teachers should be trained enough. This led to some consumerist ideas, that we are here for education and we would just be sat here and it is not our responsibility, it is the teacher's responsibility to be well prepared and teach us something. They should be experts, right? Um, the other one was about broader emphasis, which basically mean that decolonization should be endorsed by any sort of body that sits above the university, for example, the BPS or any such body, because this sort of there's also a trickle down effect that if it is emphasized by a higher body, then the lower body would automatically absorb it and they would try to align their culture and their values because they are part of that organization. The next one was about student workload, which was basically like a universal barrier because students felt overwhelmed by their workload. So whenever decolonial learning was not integrated in any sort of assessment or students did not get any academic incentive to engage, the participation would reduce. And finally, students felt disempowered often to shape their curriculum. So, because they lacked agency, like I was telling that students felt that they were not in the position enough to make any influential changes. So they felt that any feedback they would give wouldn't matter in the grander scheme of event. So they would not engage at all. So the final layer was about infrastructure, which basically involved having a biased Eurocentric knowledge system, which appeared as a factor because the belief that that Western psychology is the gold standard of psychology and it is the best, led students to resist the ideas of decolonization. Secondly, lacking pre-university exposure also mattered because for a lot of students, they encountered with the idea of decolonization only after they came to the university. So with little school background, decolonial topics felt a little bit foreign and it reduced their engagement. And the third one being that, being aware of Britain's colonial past, it affected students quite differently. So, for example, some white students may feel guilty and they felt that, they might feel a term known as white guilt, but they might feel morally obligated to work towards decolonization as a reprimand. Whereas some other students of color, they may feel very attached to the topic and they may engage. And finally, some students have admitted that they self-censor due to the fear of backlash whenever they're discussing sensitive topic. So this tension may undervalue the ideas of free discourse, but fearing backlash can also reduce engagement because students feel unsure about what is acceptable and what is not, and they would rather stay silent. Yeah, so this was my findings, and I also, based on these findings, I'd also made some CMO statement, which are context, mechanism, and outcome statement, which are basically like hypothesis or short if and then statements, um, which basically means that context triggers a mechanism leading to an output. So in our case, any decolonial initiative, when it is happening within a specific context, it's going to lead to an outcome because of something, some mechanism. I have developed 11 different CMOs, and to give you an idea of what that looks like, this is one example that if a student identifies as white, they may limit their engagement with decolonial initiative because they may experience feelings of guilt about historical harms of colonization. As a result, they may perceive decolonial work as the responsibility of students of color and may engage less. This deferring of responsibility may also burden students of color. So this is just one hypothesis. And the idea for my next study is to test these statements. And till now, I've already made collaboration with around 10 other universities, including Cardiff, Nottingham, Birmingham, Exeter, Bath, and other universities. So please join us. And these are the QR codes for both my papers.
Thank you, Gaurav. Well, thank you. That was brilliant.